Welcome back to a Big Byte of Apple podcast. I'm Daniel Black, your host. Let's get to some Apple news. So let's get started on this Apple news. There's been this speculation between Apple and Motorola, and this is a new one from CNET.com, a great website for Apple news. You should check out if you really like Apple news with CNET, called Motorola Does Not Violate Apple Patents. Oh, here we go. The U.S. International Trade Commission ruled that Motorola's Droid smartphones do not violate 3 Apple patents, dealing to blow to Apple's legal offensive against the Android smartphone ecosystem. So this is going back to your question, Brian. This, if you are just now joining, if you just skipped to this part, Brian had a question: do iPhones reincarnate as Android if they get a virus? So here is this story on CNET. The ruling is preliminary and needs to be approved by ITC's full 6-member commission. An Apple spokeswoman declined to comment. In a press release, General Counsel Scott Offer declared Motorola pleased with the ITC's decision. Apple originally lodged its ITC complaint against Motorola in October of 2010, alongside 2 lawsuits. In his complaint, Apple alleged that Motorola's Droid, Droid 2, Droid X, and a handful of other smartphones related software violated several of its patents. Apple's complaint followed one of Motorola that claimed Apple was violating 18 of its patents with its smartphone and other mobile devices. And I'll read this one last paragraph. The ITC case is actually, you know what? I'm not going to read anymore, because you should check out CNET.com. Just look up Apple News, and it should see just Apple News on CNET. So, let's see another. Let's go to Macworld. But always just Macworld. Let's talk about CES 2012. Apple and CES 2012. This is from Macworld. Weekly wrap: CES, iOS, a Palooza anniversaries, and an educated guess or 2. What's new this week? Why, product announcements exciting and strange for the International Consumer Electronics Show. A slew of iOS and Mac coverage, speculations about next week's education-themed Apple event, and more of the how-to content you love to read and we love to share. The weekly wrap is where we try to find every best stories. Oh boy, I just actually highlighted everything. Now let's go to the CES. In January, gambling in Las Vegas goes beyond the casinos. Oodles of vendors bet their products will be interesting enough to both attract press coverage and consumer spending. We found 2 highlights worth our attention and yours. They were speaker systems for the shower and scales for your baby, portable radiation detectors, in parentheses, if you're worried that your backyard is particularly radioactive, and creepy pseudo sentient iOS robots, and iPad microphones, and robotic Bluetooth bunnies. Even a remote-controlled flying drone or 2. Oh, and just for good measure, a pressure-sensitive iOS stylus from Adonet. Bringing back the old stylus from the old eMate 300 and the old message pad. We also reported a slew of Thunderbolt accessories, an AirPlay amp from Griffin, and a trio of keyboards from Metalius that can control either your Mac or your iPhone with the flick of a switch. But the 900-pound gorilla in the CES showroom was literally a 900-pound iPod dock. In fact, there were so many things to see and write about, we eventually took a quick reprieve and podcasted about the CES instead, and I am not talking about myself. This is CNET that's doing this. And that is that story. And So we've already done eBay finds, we've already done Apple News, and we've already done our email question. So I guess that's it for today's episode. Thank you everyone for watching today's episode, and yes, you actually watched today's episode, but if you're listening on iTunes, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching and listening. As you know, if you want to watch this episode, go to youtube.com/by called I forgot our podcast name. Go to youtube.com/Big Byte of Apple Cast. YouTube.com/Big Byte of Apple Cast. And thank you for listening and or watching. And thank you, and see you next time, guys.